Hello, how's everyone doing today? Welcome to the channel. If you're new, if you're a returning viewer, I'm glad to have you back, and welcome to another episode of Justin Talks Games. As the title suggests, today's episode is going to be me explaining why I don't like Resident Evil 4 as a Resident Evil game. That's not to say that I hate the game so much that, I wish it never, ever, ever existed. Like some people take it to the absolutely extreme. Excuse me. There are a couple of things that I do like about Resident Evil 4, but, they don't outweigh the things that I don't like. So I'll guess before we get into it, I'll name the things. I really like Mercenaries. Mercenaries is really fun. And the gameplay for, as much as I hate the change, and I'll admit I do not like the change to the over the shoulder. I do not like that. Obviously, I'm used to it now because that's what Capcom's been using, since 2005. So I'm used to it now. But at the time, I hated it. But it can be fun a little. It can be fun. I also like the fact that the way how the game is structured, you can have a bit more freedom to do challenges. And as a long-time Resident Evil player, I love doing challenges. Knife only, this and that, whatever it may be. Beating under a certain time. I love doing challenges in Resident Evil. It's probably my most played Resident Evil outside of the classics. If you include all the classic games, obviously, all those would absolutely destroy the amount of hours that I have in all the other games. But from Resident Evil 4 onwards, it's probably the most I've played because, again, Mercenaries. It's been very cheap to buy on modern systems and stuff. And again, as a collector, I have so many copies of it. So yeah, but now let's get into why I don't like Resident Evil 4. But before we do that, make sure to grab your drinks. I have my drink right here. Very yummy. Grab your snacks. My snacks are in the other room. I'm not going to be eating snacks on videos. And let's get into this. So, I was going to leave this one for last because this is probably going to take a long time. But I don't like how sexualized Ashley is. I don't like that. And I know people are going to be like, what are you talking about? Because it's such a normal thing now in media, to portray women, females, whatever, in a sexual way, that is just so normalized now. But, to surprise you younger new Resident Evil fans, this was never a thing. You could argue Jill's costumes in Resident Evil 3, the original. But, it's not just that. Every single cutscene that Ashley falls down. Now, mind you, just a reminder, I'm talking about the original Resident Evil 4, not the remake. Every single cutscene that Ashley falls down, go back and watch it. Or go back replay, whatever. Every single time Ashley falls down, the director placed the camera low on the ground so that when Ashley fell down, the camera would be able to see directly up her skirt and you'd be able to, see her pink underwear. And I'm not even exaggerating. Every single time that she falls down in a cutscene, you can see up, whether she falls down and rolls real quick, or she falls down and she's sitting there for a second. Doesn't matter. Anytime she falls down in a cutscene, you can see up her skirt, with the exception of the garbage jump, because they jump on top of something. She's not jumping flat down. But other than that, every single time she falls down, you can see up. And, that was never a thing in any of the other Resident Evil games. I didn't like that. There's also, I know a lot of people make jokes about this, but there's also Lewis's comment to Ashley about her chest size as well, and the camera literally zooms in on her chest. It's like, what are you doing? Also, in the GameCube one, because they toned it down in the PS2, 3, and 4 versions. In the GameCube one, when she ran around, her chest would literally go like this, almost like you're playing a Dead or Alive game. It was ridiculous. So I really didn't like that. I know a lot of people were fine with it. A lot of people like that kind of stuff. Um, but my personal opinion, I didn't care for it because, again, I grew up with the classic Resident Evil games, and none of this was in it. So if we move into language now, Resident Evil never used to swear. That was not a thing until Zero, I believe, was the very first one to swear in 2002. And that was when Billy and Rebecca were being knocked into the heliport area just before fighting Marcus. And he yells shit, as he's getting thrown. From my understanding in Resident Evil 4, the language is like a mixed match of Spanish. That's not even like that's not the proper Spanish language, but from what I understand, the villagers swear quite a bit. I don't know Spanish, so I don't know what words they're using, but apparently they're swearing quite a bit. If I'm wrong about that, I mean, cool, but from my understanding, there's a lot of swearing in that language. Another thing? Another big thing I don't like is that they completely threw the original storyline out the window. We had 6 games before Resident Evil 4, and the last one was Code Veronica, and Code Veronica, the end of Code Veronica was building up to this thing where, Chris and them were going to take down Umbrella, or whatever. They had this build up right at the end. Chris and Claire, they're in the jet, and he's like, basically Umbrella's going down. We're going to take down Umbrella. So it's really setting up like the storyline where they're going to take down Umbrella, which I was pretty excited back in 2001. I was like, oh man, this is going to be real cool. Only to find out, a couple of years later, that it's like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. Oh, by the way, Umbrella don't exist no more. Umbrella's bye-bye. They went the whole stock market route, and they're like, Umbrella stock market crashed and blah blah blah, and they threw it all away, which I hated that. So essentially, I don't want to say it pretends that the other games don't exist, but it destroys the entire Umbrella storyline. Like, it just cuts it off, and it's like, now we're not doing this anymore. Even though there was a huge build up to all those games. A lot of people say the games aren't connected, they're all individual stories, but that's not true. All the games, you're going, with the end of Resident Evil 1, right? It's like, okay, we know about what Umbrella's doing, and at that point the characters are doing investigations and stuff, right, to try and take Umbrella down. But yeah, Resident Evil 4 disregarded that. Bye-bye. No more Umbrella, and I hated that. Another thing that I don't see anybody talking about is that they completely 360'd Leon's character. Excuse me. And so many people don't know this because there's a lot of new people coming in now who are starting with Resident Evil 4, excuse me, or the remake of Resident Evil 4, or even Resident Evil 2 Remake, which adopts Resident Evil 4 Leon's personality. But for those of you who've never played the original Resident Evil 2, Leon was never a joker. He was never this, comedy character that they literally turned him into. Because if you play Resident Evil 4, he's cracking off, making all these comments, all these jokes and stuff like that. Excuse me. Even in Resident Evil 2 Remake, he's always making comments like, oh shit, man. And in Resident Evil 4, your remake, he's like, yeah, you like that? It's just, in my opinion, stupid things like that. They completely changed his character around. So like I said, for those of you who've never played Resident Evil 2 and are new to the series and you're watching my video, Resident Evil, the original Leon, um, was very calm, very collected, and he was serious, right? He gave Ada trouble. I think at least once or twice. I know once for sure, um, for being reckless and putting herself in danger. Leon has to explain to himself, at least twice or so, that it's his job to protect people. It's his job to do this and that. He took his role very seriously. Um, but in Resident Evil 4, I'm not saying that he wasn't serious about his mission or anything, but 90% of the time in Resident Evil 4, he's doing like these backflips, these kicks, and this and that, making all these silly comments and stuff. They literally turned him into a comedy character. And, I don't see anybody talking about that. But I didn't like that. And I seen that kind of like bleed through into the Resident Evil 2 remake. Um, where he's making these offhand comments when he's shooting zombies, when in reality, he'd be kind of scared. He wouldn't be like, "Oh man, oh not again, oh seriously," just making these dumb comments. Um, so I that's one of my biggest, my two biggest ones are how Ashley's portrayed, um, and the complete 360 change of Leon that unfortunately is now his personality. And I don't like that. I'm not saying people can't change, but I didn't like that they turned him into this funny comedy character. Essentially, is what he is now, and I don't care for that. Um, yeah, it's stuff like that I don't like. The whole Umbrella storyline gets disregarded. Bye bye. Um, Ashley being treated the way that she's treated. Leon's character literally being destroyed, and he's basically a completely different character, different person. Um, excuse me, in Resident Evil 4. Um, Now, if we get down to the actual game itself, I don't know if it was a new game engine or what they were doing, but there are so many pop in and pop out textures that is so noticeable. And funnily enough, if we talk about Resident Evil 8 Village for a second, Village and the PS5 version, because I have the PS5 version and the PS4 version, they have more pop in and pop out textures than Resident Evil 4 does. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But yeah, there's a lot of, popping in and popping out textures. The game itself is really broken. You can get out of the map in like at least 6 or 7 different places. I mean, not that it's not cool to discover these things, right? But your game should be like fully tied together and really tight and good to go. Um, but there's quite a few places you can get out of the map. And even skip bosses. You can skip a bunch of places. Like two major ones that I can think of off the top of my head is you can skip the two giants in the lava area. I think it's under the castle or whatever. You can skip that whole thing, as well as the minecart. You can skip that as well. You can just literally skip it to this specific point where you can jump over to the next cart. He'll glitch, he'll go down, and you can just run away. Not that those things aren't cool, but to be able to easily break the game that easily, it's not great, right? Yeah, I don't know what else to say because I don't want to drag this on for like 30, 40 minutes. But yeah, basically that's why I don't like Resident Evil 4. It's just, it took the series down a path that, in my opinion, it didn't need to go. You could see Resident Evil, if we talk about another game for a second, if you see Resident Evil 5, yes, it's a lot more action oriented and all that, but the game, it's not as broken, it's just more solid. And you can see that they noticed that they may have met, I can't even talk, I'm stumbling over my words, I apologize. They may have noticed that they made a mistake. trying to get rid of the whole Umbrella thing, because Umbrella kind of becomes a central part in Resident Evil 5. With the progenitor virus and stuff, and it goes back to explains things back from Zero, right? The training facility, Marcus, and blah 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 blah. It's very Umbrella heavy, and that's the one thing I do really like about Resident Evil 5. Everything else, I don't really care for much about 5 either, but that's one thing I love about 5 is that, you know, it's very Umbrella heavy, so it connects to, you know, like Zero to Code Veronica, right? Where while sprinkled in some stuff from 4, because obviously Ouroboros is Type 3, Las Plagas, or whatever. But 5 connects a lot more strongly to the other games compared to 4. So I think they realized their mistake with 4, not tying it to the previous storyline. There were previous versions of Resident Evil 4, because Resident Evil 4 was in development hell for a while, from my understanding. And one of them was you were going to meet Spencer or something, and you were in a castle and this and that, but that got scrapped for Devil May Cry. Excuse me. So yeah, I don't know. But that's basically why I don't like Resident Evil 4. Again, it took it down a bad path. Look at Resident Evil 6. Look at, going back to like sexual stuff, whatever. Look at Helena's sister, right? Like, that was crazy. You know, she's rubbing herself, touching herself, you know, rubbing against the characters and all that. You know, it's just stupid. Honestly, stupid. You know, and again, I cannot blame Resident Evil 4 for that, because it started off with them doing that to Ashley, right? And then you didn't really have any of that with Sheva, because they made her strong and independent, and you know, she was I liked Sheva. She was a nice character. But you know, you didn't have any of that stuff in that. So maybe, you know, they were like, oh well, you know, we need to have some attractive characters, so they did that. Again, a lot of stuff that happened in 5 and 6, I do blame on 4, because, like, again, action and blah blah blah, right? I don't like the direction that 4 went with the action. I don't like the things that I mentioned. I'm not going to repeat myself. But yeah, so again, as an action game, it's entertaining. Again, I have a lot of time in Mercenaries and in the game itself, because I have more freedom to do challenges. But as a Resident Evil game, that's why I don't like Resident Evil, because it took it down a path, it changed characters, and again, it did a lot of sexualizing, and in my opinion, that stuff doesn't have any place in Resident Evil. You know, aside from the action, you know, maybe add some action, because Resident Evil 3 was a bit more action-oriented than obviously the Resident Evil 2. But the other stuff that I mentioned, you know, don't kill your storyline. You know, don't throw it away. You know, that's dumb. You know, definitely don't sexualize your characters. And don't completely 360 your characters. Although Resident Evil 5 did that too with Wesker, but you know, again, I'm going off topic. But yeah, anyway, that's why I don't like Resident Evil 4. If I don't end this video, I'm going to start repeating myself, and it's going to get very annoying. So I'm going to end it here. If you did enjoy this episode, and now you understand why I don't like Resident Evil 4 as a Resident Evil game, now you know why. If you agree with my points, leave a comment. If you think I'm overreacting and you think I'm being dumb, you know, again, leave a comment. Until then, have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys in my next video.